Okay, welcome to Free Association. My name's Dennis. I think it's the 12th of July now. It's a Saturday evening anyway. It's 8 o'clock, just after 8 o'clock. And I wanted to do a different type of live stream. So I'm only going to talk for 5 minutes or so. But I wanted to talk about the potential change to the FBI. So Dan Bongino is apparently about to walk out or has already walked out. Keep hearing people talking about him not reporting for work because of the Pam Bondi Epstein situation. So I've been listening to Dan Bongino's show for a while. Obviously, he gave up the show to go into the FBI as deputy head, basically. So he gave up a lot to do that job. So he was expecting to be able to do the job. But then again, it's government, and government grinds really slowly, and there's bureaucracy, and there's always somebody with a counter argument. It's not the same as having a podcast and just saying what you think. It's a very different business, and he knows that because he's been in the Secret Service. He knows how government works. He's been in the police force, so he knows how corporate structures work. But he gave up a very lucrative career. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Dan Bongino says. He always ignores the genocide in Palestine. He doesn't criticize Israel at all. But that's the reason Hi, Dave. Welcome to the room. Dave says the government never said there was a client list. Only the media suggested this list. It's not necessarily true because Pam Bondi said there was a file on her desk when she was asked about the client list. She didn't say there wasn't a client list. She said there was a file on her desk waiting to be reviewed. So in February, I think on a CBS interview, that one. I can't remember the details of it, but obviously it's a long time ago, and I'm in Britain. You guys are in America, so there's a lot of distance between what I'm saying and what's actually going on. But I'm doing my best to cover it. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have a client list. It's just there was a list of numbers. There's a black book of numbers, but that includes all of his financial clients as well. So you can't tell which are sex clients and which ones are financial clients, if any of them are. So the black book's been published since 2015. Though Nick Bryan published that. It's that nearly 10 years ago, 9 years ago. But anyway, this is all blown up basically over the weekend. So the FBI is about to lose Dan Bongino, potentially about to lose the other guy that's in there, the director, unless Pam Bondi goes, and Pam Bondi probably won't go because that's a bigger job. Department of Justice, I think. Obviously, they're both big jobs, but Kash Patel at the FBI probably will stay. Pam Bondi will probably stay. That's how it normally would work. So somebody a bit junior, which in this case is Dan Bongino, will probably leave because he's sick of covering up for Pam Bondi. So I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but there's obviously some drama going on. There's nothing, as far as I can tell, on the Rumble platform that indicates what's going to happen. I listened to the Vince show yesterday, which I do quite often. And Vince is the guy that took over from Dan Bongino on his podcast on a different slot, but the same company. And he didn't mention it. So that may not have happened on Friday when he was setting his show up, but certainly happened later on Friday. Yes, Dave, I'm in the north of England. I'm in Newcastle. So I'm looking from an outsider and trying to make sense of all of this. Welcome, Fox to Cypher. Looks like we've got an audience tonight. It's unusual for me to have an audience on a live stream, but if anybody wants to come up and have a conversation, you're very welcome. It might only be a short conversation because I'm not staying on that long, but here you go, Fox to Cypher. Send an invite. Hello there.
Hello.
I can hear you, yeah.
It's a blessing. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
No problem. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. It might only be 10, 15 minutes, but you're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I just randomly stumbled checking out who was live, and I saw that you were live. So I was like, all right, let's see, getting into it over here. So what's
All right, I think I've looked a little bit top, but Dave in the chat is saying I could be more concerned about the Muslims destroying my country. Well, that's just propaganda, Dave, quite honestly. The Muslims are destroying.
you're right?
It's
It
propaganda.
is propaganda. It is propaganda. Where do you live?
I'm in the UK.
Oh, beautiful, very beautiful. Yeah, Muslims are definitely not destroying their country. It is
I've met,
definitely propaganda.
I've met lots of Muslims and they were all lovely people.
Yeah, I'm a Muslim myself.
All right, that's fair enough. Yeah, we used to do. I'm in a philosophy group. We used to meet in a Turkish restaurant, but upstairs
Nice.
in their prayer room.
Yeah.
So we would be having our philosophy meeting and order some lunch or whatever while we're doing it. And the staff would come up and be praying in the corner. So lovely people. They were
Love
happy,
people.
happy to share their prayer room with us, and we were happy to share our philosophy room with their prayers. It's no problem with either of them, as far as I'm concerned.
No, as it shouldn't be. We're all in this together. Same world.
It's the same as the same.
We're all humans. Yeah, we're all living the same world, bro. We're all humans. You know, like why shouldn't we all be loving each other and treating each other with kindness and respect?
Yeah, I think the problem in the United States is the idea taking root that America settle in somewhere. The American extremism is causing a problem because they treat foreigners
Yeah.
as second class citizens, and they treat all
You know
foreigners
why?
as if they're second class citizens, when actually everybody's the same.
Do you know why?
I don't know where that came from, but it's been around for a while.
So create division and discord to people, and because it's really a holy war that's going on right now, right? We could really technically say that World War III is a war on Muslims. To be honest, started long ago, and it's been happening. I mean, America, for example, set everything up to be presented that Muslims were terrorists, right?
Yeah,
Or
just a bit.
terroristic, right? Which we understand that that's not how it happened. We understand that the troops even were trained by the CIA and all these other things, and it's just like it's we understand the propaganda, you know. And I live in America myself, and so it's a different.
Yeah, I was just going to say the whole thing was set up by Brzezinski. Basically, he set up the forces in Afghanistan to fight the Russians, and then they turned the weapons on the States. So they turned all that training that they had to fight the Russians against the United States. So if you're going to train people to fight, you've got to expect them at some point to fight you.
Especially if you bomb their families
Yeah, exactly.
and destroy their home
Yeah,
after you train them. They'll
yeah.
definitely do something then.
I
And then if
think
you pay people to look like some, like ISIS, for example, they're not Muslim. You know what I mean? Like those people don't represent Islam whatsoever. And you know what the term Muslim means?
I don't know the literal meaning of it. No,
Muslim means one who fully submits to God.
right?
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So even like the trees to be Muslim, right? All these different things it means. So like we take back in the day, we're like, all right, well, Jesus came, right? Jesus came to the Jewish people, not to the whole world, but to the Jewish population, because they were going against the commandments that were already set in place from a previous prophet by the name of Moses, right? Who brought the Torah, right? And the commandments. And so when things got changed, a new prophet had to come, right? Jesus came. Um, and so it was like a lot of people get caught up because they're just like, we're all different, right? But like, or when they try to be like, oh, now we're Christian, or you got to be this, you got to be that. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, Jesus wasn't a Christian. Christianity was built afterwards. The Bible was composed after Jesus died. Jesus never said, this is the word, right? People compiled his teachings and were like, this is his word,
Yeah,
right? To be honest.
The New Testament is a Greek mystery play. It's a Greek
Yeah,
tragedy. It's constructed
correct.
the same way as Greek theatre,
Uh-huh. Yep,
with the Sermon on the Mount
that is
and
correct.
the resurrection as the finale.
Yep. But who was the ones that compiled it? They were Romans,
So
right? The Romans.
Romans and Greeks, I would imagine, because
Uh-huh.
at that particular point, Palestine was Greek speaking. It had been conquered by the Greeks before it was conquered by the Romans.
Yep.
So Galilee was Greek speaking
Yep.
with Greek culture.
Real.
So it would make sense.
So what was Jesus then? Right? If Jesus wasn't a Christian then, that's how it got. That's how those things came, right? Because if we read the Bible, right, and we read originally what Moses was told, right? Deuteronomy 18:18, and he says, I'll raise up upon you some amongst your brethren of the Ishmaelites, right? They tell us what tribe they came from. It specifically talks about the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and his forthcoming in particular, because he says that he'll give word to his mouth to speak to the people for that, right? And the word. Realistically, if we think about it, Jesus didn't have a word that he gave like that. People composed what he had said, right? Is what they're saying, right? The different prophet or not prophets, the different disciples, right? Mark, Luke, James, the different in Matthew, how they went and did the different. They went out and they compiled all the different teachings, is what they said, and then they made the Bible, right? That's the New Testament. But what was Jesus? He wasn't a Christian. He wasn't Jewish, obviously. He got sent to the Jews. He wasn't a Jewish like that. He was an Israelite, though, right? And what about Moses and Abraham and people before them? What were they? Well, they were Christian.
Moses was Egyptian.
What did he follow? Because they all follow the monotheistic teachings of the oneness of God. They all taught the same message through the course of time. The message has not been changed, right? It's been a revival of the message each prophet has came and brought because different, cultures, different people decided to try to change it as humans and adopt it, with their own ideologies. So next prophets had to come throughout time and time again. So the last prophet brought the last message, which could not be changed, right? So like if we go to like Noah and Noah's Ark, right? What religion did he follow? He wasn't a Christian, right? He wasn't a Jew. What was he?
I think I don't know, but I thought Noah was a Jew.
No. Judaism wasn't the first religion. They were of the chosen people, and they had teachings that were brought to them from Moses, right? For that, they were enslaved by Pharaoh, right?
Right, so part of it's
So,
coming from Egypt, part of it's coming from Babylon.
right, it was before then. Like that's where that comes in, where it was the term Muslim that was granted to us by God, by the Creator. That's what the term was coined from. All throughout time, all the different prophets, they had this term to describe what they are, one who fully submits to God. Now, Islam was created differently, right? At a specific point in time, God brought the final way of teaching, the way of life for humans. It was like this is the final, this is it, right? And he was like, this is the final message as well. I'm going to bring a book that because we understand as like, you know what cinematics is? So cinematics being like the visual representation of sound harmonics and frequency through vibrations also.
Yeah.
So like water reacts to sound, frequency, and vibrations. And us human beings, being mostly composed of water, react the same ways to sound, frequency, and vibrations as you would see inside of these different things using those cinematics and such.
I agree.
And so God created the final message for humans, the Quran, and made it in a harmony that's so that it reacts with the body and the brain in specific ways like that. So if it was disrupted or changed in any kind of way, it is immediately known. So it can't be, right? And it's the way that it heals the actual structure because we also understand there's sound to heal, right? That's called harmonic resonance. If you want to like destroy cancer or anything else, different things like that, or even like ligaments and different things like that that's hurt different parts, you can tap into the frequency, right? A cancer cell, for example, is a disrupted cell. You can tell by the cinematics of it, and you can see that it's not sound, and you can tap into the frequency of that, tap into it as you would like a opera singer would sing into the glass to match the frequency. You match the frequency and do the opposites. And what it does is it balances it out and it creates it to be a normal cell again, right? These are called harmonic, resonance,
Yeah,
right? So the way that, yeah, it's beautiful. And the way that the Quran affects us in our brain and our body is it affects us in similar patterns and similar ways and frequencies. So it's really beautiful to like be able to further see that. And so like for people to be like to set up the war against, Muslims as such because, you want to make a war against God is really what that is and of the teaching of it because the world and the world leaders, they have their own agenda and to have the control and power. And so to have free thinking people thinking properly for God, not just in the ways that they were like used from like the time of Constantine or Nebuchadnezzar or like other people who had adopted, they were Roman Catholics as well. And they also adopted the Christian ideology in order to have the backing from the church. And they went and had crusades and much other different things that happened throughout time to be able to actually control the world. That's why the Pope is so tied into everything, to the Freemasons as such, tied into Christianity as such, tied into everything, and tied into Judaism and the world leaders as such, because it's used for that. We got to realize that Rome at one point in time did control most of the earth at one point, right? And so, like, figuring out like why and what they did, that's where Jesus was, right? They strung him up in the Roman ways, right? Like we gotta see what was really happening. Like it was a savage time. And so it's just, and those still reign prevalent to the day. Why do you think that all of our sports stuff is held in the Coliseum, right?
yeah.
And
That's
it
right.
has division.
It's all based in ancient Rome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it gets deep. It's crazy. All of Europe is currently being destroyed by Muslims. I don't agree with that.
No, I
Like why?
live I live in Britain and I don't see that, Jade. So you might be looking at the wrong TV channel because it's
Like
feeding you.
a lot. Yeah, that's like I live in America. That's like trying to say that China is now our enemy. They're claiming that. So the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, a month ago held pref and still till this day, and 2 months ago actually, still till this day, have been talking about the different genocide and the different ideologies and actions that have been taking place from those ideologies of Israel, right? And how it's been committing so much mass murder and genocide of the Palestinian people, right? So they were saying that even if they were justifying it through the retaliation of Hamas, is what they're claiming, right? They're still destroying a whole population of people and a whole country of people, right? Because of an organization and a group, trying to say that that's the reason why, when they've gone way beyond for that. They're 90 something percent of everything is destroyed there. Everything upon every building structure, everything you could think of, destroyed. Like it's nuts. And it's like, so we understand, like, all right, these types of things are set up, right? So they're working together, right? And China was the first amongst them to be like, hey, we see what you guys are doing in the International Court of Justice and the ICJ. You can watch it live. And when you watch the old ones that were live, where they were like, this is not okay. You guys are committing genocide. This like everything about it, right? Literally right afterwards, within the week, they tried to be like, boom, now all of a sudden, two people were headed to the University of Michigan carrying this parasite or this fungus. And now all of China is a terrorist. Now all of China is the enemy of America.
Yeah, it's because they're trying to set up a war in 2 or 3 years' time.
Right?
So they slowly build up this picture of an enemy, so that when they do eventually have the weapons to justify and a reason to justify a war, then they can.
Same Same as listening to same. How? Do you believe in God, Dave? Like, just out of curiosity, are you a believer or follower of God? Yes. What do you believe? What do you follow, sir? Jesus. So you would call yourself a Christian then? Okay. So Jesus came from Abraham, right? Abraham decided to devote his life to God. And at one point in time, he was commanded to God to sacrifice his own son, one of his kids. When he did so, the knife went rubber, right? It went limp, where it could not, it dulled, it could not cut, right? So because of the devotion, the way that he decided to live his life for the oneness of God, right? After his whole village turned against him because they were against, his whole village was all about polytheism, idol worshiping, and different things like that. It got to a point where there was a statue that there was a big statue inside of town, right? And it held an axe, right? And they were like, everybody went out to go do their daily dues, outside the village, go hunt, gather, do different things that they were doing. Well, Abraham decided to go and crush one of the statues, right? And when he crushed statues all around, then he put the axe in the hand of one of the statues, right? Everybody came back and were like, man, what happened? What happened? What happened? They were like, he was like, man, it must have been this guy. It must have been this guy, right? He was like, it must have been this guy, right? And so Abraham was like, if it was a statue because that's who we worship, that's who it is, he could have done that. Everybody's like, bro, he can't move. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, so why are we worshiping this guy who can't even do anything or even defend himself or the things around him? You feel me? Like, why are we sitting here doing this stuff? It got to a point where they casted him into the fire. They catapulted him, right? When he was landing into the fire, God created it all to be a garden where he landed, where he did not get into the fire, right? He lived his life ever since then, right? Yeah, kids, so on and so forth. That's where, Ishmael came, Isaac, when he went sacrificed, his lineage, now the last of the prophets, right, would come from his lineage. Okay, so in Deuteronomy 18:18, right, and Moses came, right, and was like talking to God. And God was telling him, right, I'm going to bring up from you amongst the brethren of the Ishmaelites, right, from a specific region also, right, of this land to be able to go and do it, right? In Deuteronomy 18:18, it breaks down where the forthcoming of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, will be coming, right? So knowing that the last of the prophets will come from Abraham due to his sacrifice and what he did and his dutifulness of God to the God, right? We understand that is. And through his lineage, that's where Jesus came. That's where also Muhammad came. Muhammad comes from the Ishmaelites, from Ishmael, coming from Abraham, right? The Kaaba that people pray to, that we were commanded by God just to be a direction. That's the only symbolic resonance of that, right? It's just the direction to show that we are doing this and following the commandment of God, right? Of what he decides to tell us to do, right? Abraham created that. He created that location. His footsteps are even there till this day, right? So we try to be like, Muhammad is this, he's this warmonger, he's that, all these other things like that. Like, saying that's blasphemous, Like, we understand the succession of how it works, right? So each prophet came in succession because people decided to change the word of God until the last word came that could not be changed, right? What we just discussed earlier in the show, I don't know if you were here inside of it, listening to it, we understood that Jesus didn't write the Bible, right? So the Old Testament was created from Moses, right? We had this given to, right, exactly. Jesus did not write the Bible. The New Testament came from Mike, James, Luke, Matthew, the different, disciples that went and scoured the earth to find his teachings, what they said, compiled it, and then the consensus of the different kings and nobles and different people and scholars of the time said that this is under consensus going to be the Bible, right? Of what's going to be made for the future. Realistically, it was people who are in power and control in order to have that, just like the book of Eli, the movie is. It's all for power and control, right? Realistically, the Christianity, New Age Christianity, right? Because it got created after Jesus died, because Jesus was not a Christian. Jesus was not a Christian, nor did Jesus follow Christianity either, nor did he say to follow Christianity, right? I love Jesus and I love to follow in his teachings as well. And I do so to the point that I don't even eat pork. I don't drink alcohol. Right? I don't try to do these different things that he says for us not to do. I follow his commandments very strictly. Right. And so just following that succession and understanding that like the body responds, right? What we talked about earlier, harmonic resonance, how we heal with sound and how we have cinematics where we can see sound in its visual representation based upon frequencies, vibrations, and how it's really affecting. So when we know that sound can take shape and form based upon those different things, right? It's called cinematics, was the visual representation of it. We see that in specific hertz, specific frequencies that water, is affected by it. And us as humans are affected by sound as well as such. God had created his word in such a perfect way where it actually heals the body with the sound, with those frequencies. It's something different, something perfect that was created. And that was his final message to us. And it's beautiful like that. It's not something that was just created from humans. Like, I understand people say warmonger this and that. Like, there are people that claim under the guise of Christianity and other things like that, right? We took the time of Nebuchadnezzar or the time of Constantine, Brian Constantinople, right? During the time of different things like this, right? These are horrible, wicked rulers that use Christianity that they helped form and create, which is what was created today. Because if you look at the picture of Jesus right now, right? Yes, you're right. Saying did create music to lure people. Yes, you are right. He did. It was during the time of Seth or Sheath, one of the sons of Adam. He decided to lure and disrupt people and create flute, create drum, create different things in order to allow them to get swayed, lose their sense, and not focus on God anymore. That's really what that happened from the prophet Seth, as we've known to call him. Yes, music was used for that, so it can be disillusioned. So it could be used for that. That's why the message, you got the heart is a sponge. That's why, like, a lot of Muslims, for example, a lot of them try to not listen to music for that reason. Not because they say that it's, or anything like that, but because that furtherment of understanding and how that came about and what it's really used for and how it's just a temporary type of thing that people try to find solace in instead of the creator. They try to, it's horrible stuff, to be honest with you. That's why you have to create it through betterment. And if people are lost in the sauce, hopefully there could be some music out there that's better for that, because that's how I see music, right? No matter where you go, no matter where you're at, you're going to hear it. But what are people listening to? I want to at least create something that's going to be beautiful where people are going to be able to come to the creator, try to be back to create oneness with each other and have unity. At least that's what I'm going to create music for.
Music's good as a healer. If you pick the right song in the right situation, you can heal yourself with music.
Yes, you can, depending on the sound and the frequency and the vibrations of it. and what the hertz are and what you're using it for. Different sounds and different hertz frequency react to different things, just like minerals and vitamins, right? Different minerals and vitamins, like potassium. Potassium reacts at a specific frequency differently, right? So if you're like growing a vegetable or a plant, right, you can play a specific harmonic frequency and it will trigger a growth within those specific vitamins based upon the sounds and frequencies that match those different vitamins and nutrients inside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thanks for coming in, Fox. We've had a good long chat, so I've stayed on longer than I thought I was going to. So I'm gonna. No worries at all. You're very welcome. I just like to have an open discussion. I don't think it's reasonable to make assumptions about people. I'd rather just talk to people and find out who they are.
Yeah.
So that's what I try and do here. But I'm going to wrap it up. So thanks for coming. I'll see you again another time.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Peace.
No worries at all.